welcome to part 2 of my video about the Alpine saga, where of course, as you know, Alpine lost Fernando Alonso to Aston Martin, and of course Oscar Piastri rejected the announcement that he will be racing for them in 2023. So as a result, if Alpine now need to go and find a second driver, well, I have a short list of 8 different drivers. Starting off with Pierre Gasly. Now, just like Esteban Ocon, he's an up-and-coming French talent. He already has a race win. He's already scored quite a few podiums in his time in Formula 1, but just like Ocon, he does seem to be a bit mid. Because, of course, Ocon, beaten by Perez, beaten by Ricciardo, beaten by Alonso. Gasly destroyed Brendan Hartley, but I have to say Brendan Hartley was never F1 material. Got destroyed by Max Verstappen himself, but then heavily beat Danny Kvyat, and he has mostly beaten Tsunoda. Although I have to say, though, Gasly has been a bit shaky at the start of this season. But how will Pierre Gasly fit in at Alpine? Well, I'm not really sure, because unfortunately with his rather rocky friendship that he used to have with Esteban Ocon when they were kids, it's kind of, I can only imagine the atmosphere being at the team being very toxic. And I think the reason the fact that the most likely option to take the second Alpine seat is Pierre Gasly is probably why on earth Alpine are in a mess with this whole Alonso and Piastri situation. I mean, if we're going to be frankly honest, I mean, getting Pierre Gasly in itself is not the most ideal option, but he is probably a better bet than quite a lot of drivers I'm actually going to mention next. But there's also the issue that if Pierre Gasly actually does really well at Alpine and beats Esteban Ocon comfortably, he's probably going to go to a team like Mercedes, Ferrari, or even return back to Red Bull, only of course to drive for their senior team once again. So, despite the fact that, in my opinion, Gasly is probably the best option out of these 8 drivers I'm about to talk about, he does bring a lot of risk and a lot of problems and a lot of baggage with him. Second up, and I know some people think this is a bit of a sideways move, it's not exactly the most exciting driver ever. It is indeed Valtteri Bottas, currently driving for Alfa Romeo, having had a very good season when the points opportunities have opened up, scoring a lot of points and single-handedly keeping Alfa Romeo in 6th place in the constructors' standings. Now, if we're going to be truly honest, Bottas is probably a driver that will be there to help them consolidate for the future, but I mean, the problem is, though, he is the sort of driver they will probably have, keep him around for 2 or 3 years, but then after that, he's probably going to be there to be a seat warmer forever the next big thing comes out of the academy. But the problem with the academy is there isn't really anyone anywhere near as good as Oscar Piastri. But having said that, though, Valtteri Bottas has shown himself to be a very level-headed, competent, decent driver who can do well in the midfield. Did a great job as Lewis Hamilton's number 2 at Mercedes, helped Mercedes win 5 constructors titles and helped them win a streak of 8 consecutive constructors championships. But having said that, though, Valtteri Bottas is now going to be 33 years old, but I do think, though, he is a slightly better option than the next guy I'm going to talk about, and it is in 3rd place, none other than, of course, Daniel Ricciardo. Now, of course, as you're well aware, Daniel Ricciardo raced for the former iteration of Alpine, Renault, back in 2019 and 2020. Whilst he did struggle early on in his arrival at Renault, he got his head down, started outpacing Hulkenberg and outscoring him, and then of course in 2020 he had a great season. We got 2 podiums and easily dominated Esteban Ocon. But here lies in the problem. Since then, Daniel Ricciardo has been very poor at McLaren. His consistency has completely gone. And frankly, on a PR front, this would be quite embarrassing for Alpine to get a driver who rejected him, only to have them back because he's now not quite the same driver he used to be, and Alpine just simply do not feel like they have any other options on the table. And I have to say, from a sponsorship point of view and a PR point of view, this is quite a bad move for them to make. Not that I'm saying that Ricciardo would struggle if he returned to Alpine, but it really would be quite embarrassing for them if, of course, Piastri was to take Ricciardo's seat at McLaren, and it would essentially give Alpine the appearance of a team who are now feeding off other teams' scraps, which is not great. Now, of course, there are at least 5 other drivers I thought of, starting off with, of course, Alex Albon. Now, this is a bit of a left field choice, of course. After spending many years in the Junior Series, he made his debut in F1 for AlphaTauri, back then known as Toro Rosso, where he put in a lot of impressive performances and matched the pace of Danny Kvyat. Then, of course, with Pierre Gasly struggling, he replaced Gasly mid-season, where he did a fairly solid job for the second half of the year. However, his performances in the Red Bull senior team were pretty bad in 2020, where he lost confidence, he got outpaced more heavily by Verstappen, and let's face it, his confidence totally collapsed throughout the season, despite scoring 2 podiums. When of course Verstappen won about 2 or 3 races and came close to finishing runners-up in the championship, whilst Albon was somewhere like, I don't know, down in 7th or 8th place in the driver's standings. Kind of a bad result, but since then he's returned, he's scored 3 points from Williams, regularly outpacing Latifi, proving to be a threat in what is probably the slowest car on the grid at Williams. And Alex Albon might well be a decent purchase for Alpine to make, because of course they could well be potentially pouching a potentially very good driver for them in years to come. You know, Gasly, I mean, we all know he's kind of key. He'll probably use the team as a stepping stone to go to Ferrari, Mercedes or Red Bull. Bottas or Ricciardo are getting old and they're not going to get better, and frankly, there'll probably be a seat warmer for the next up and coming kid that Alpine might have in their academy. Whilst Albon is a driver they could keep around for many years if their relationship flourishes and blossoms, and possibly a user, possibly of course if he's around, they could easily then kick Esteban Ocon out if they deem him to be surplus to requirements. Next up, it is Nick de Vries, Formula E champion, Formula 2 champion, but there is a problem with Nick de Vries. He's never actually raced in Formula 1, and of course he's now 27 years old. He's only a year older than Alex Albon, but if he does make his debut next year, he'll be 28 years old. Not exactly the youngest figure around, but he is, of course, 6 years younger than Bottas and Ricciardo. I have to say, though, I do have a feeling De Vries is going to take a bit of time to really get his foot down, and I honestly don't know how well he would do in Formula 1 if he ever had the chance, because I've never seen him actually race in F1. His F2 performances were very promising, but they were often inconsistent, and he did have a habit of having bad races frequently. And to be honest, he is kind of low down on this list because I really cannot tell you whether he really is good. But he is a driver who has been very heavily hyped up throughout the years, despite the fact none of the teams have ever given him a chance due to his lack of sponsorship money. Next up, it is of course Pourchaire, junior driver for the Sauber Academy. Of course, if he was to be promoted, he'd be racing for Alfa Romeo. Of course, Alfa Romeo seem rather keen on keeping their lineup of Bottas, who is a consistent point scorer, and Zhou who brings a lot of money. Yeah, he scored 5 points with a 10th at Bahrain and an 8th at Canada, but you know, if Alfa Romeo are really keen to keep hold of Zhou's money, this could be an opportunity for Alpine to pounce and steal another youngster from another academy. And Pourchaire is currently sitting in second place in the Formula 2 standings behind championship leader Felipe Drugovich, who of course is also another contender for the Alpine seat. Felipe Drugovich is currently in his third year of Formula 2, so he's not exactly the hottest prospect going around. But Brazil have not had a four-time Formula 1 driver since 2017 when Felipe Massa was racing. Drugovich has won 4 races this season compared to 3 wins for Pourchaire in the Formula 2 races so far, but it has to be said though, Pourchaire's record in Formula 2 is a bit patchy. He won 3 races for MP Motorsport, of course he's returned to for this season, in his first season where he finished 9th in the standings. Last year he picked up about 4 podiums, but he didn't win a race. And it has to be said, you know, he's the likes of Mick Schumacher, Yuki Tsunoda, then of course Oscar Piastri have all been more of sort of stolen the limelight, whilst Drugovich has quietly developed. But having said that, he's not exactly the most amazingly hot talent. Yeah, of course, he had a season in Formula 3 back in 2019 where he finished 16th in the standings for Carling Bus Racing, having scored 8 points from a 6th place finish at Hungary, which was his only point score that year. He dominated the 2018 Euro Formula Open Championship where he won 14 out of 16 races, but it has to be said the upper level of opposition was very weak, with a lot of journeyman drivers that none of them have really progressed that far up the junior rankings. But of course, I am putting out there that Drugovich could come to Formula 1 if the money can be found, since of course Brazil are fairly keen to have a driver in the sport, having not had a full-time driver for 5 years now. And of course, before all of that, he also of course has a championship with him, the MRF Challenge Formula 2000 Championship, which is of course a championship in Asia. He also finished 3rd in the German Formula 4 Championship back in 2017. Not really sure. I mean, for me, he's only 7th on this league, I beg your pardon, because I have to say he's probably the least hottest prospect. And then last but not least, of course, 8th choice on my list is going to be Zhou Guanyu. Of course, he's been racing around for a male this year. He's currently scored 5 points, but truth be told, just like Drugovich, if they were to pick him up, it would obviously be very financially driven. It's not neither him nor Drugovich are that particularly hot prospects. I mean, Zhou went through 3 years of Formula 2, won a few races here and there, but he achieved the best championship finish of 3rd last year. And frankly, I don't really see much chance of Pourchaire, Drugovich or Zhou getting a seat unless of course negotiations with the first 5 drivers I've mentioned, Gasly, Bottas, Ricciardo, Albon and Vries, all going wrong for whatever reason. So if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe to Crystal Racing, and I'll be here again next time very soon.